Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Demystify Working with Microsoft. And today I'm very excited to welcome Karen Fassio. Karen, welcome to today's show.
Thanks, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, really looking forward to our discussion today. And before we get started, though, Karen, maybe you can take a minute, introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about your background, and then what you're doing today.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I've pretty much grown up in the software tech industry, and have spent the last 24 years at Microsoft. I'm now where I was spent a lot of time in channel.
Yeah.
Love the channel space, love the ecosystem space, and predominantly worked at the global partner solutions level. So I've been sort of at that altitude of strategy and roadmap planning. And now I am a principal for my GTM firm, Abundant Marketing, and
Mhm.
we help channel partners with defining and developing GTM.
Great. So it sounds like you've seen Microsoft from the inside and the outside.
Outside for sure these days, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Thanks for joining me. I'm super excited for our discussion today. And what I thought I'd like to chat with you about and sort of tap into your experience is something I heard at Inspire, and it was from Jake Swenson. And he said, all roads lead to marketplace. And I think that's going to be a critical theme for Microsoft partners in FY24. There was some stats that Microsoft published. Today, 95% of Fortune 500 companies are on Azure. 85% of companies that hold what's called a MAC commit or an Azure commitment are using Marketplace to transact now. So that on its own is an amazing statistic to me. And Microsoft is also saying that they're seeing the deal sizes increase. So deals that go through Marketplace they're seeing 120% larger than traditional sales channels. So those putting those three stats together is amazing. I mean, it really is showing that Marketplace is here. It's here to stay, and I think it's going to be a big part of the go forward motion for partners. And
Yeah.
would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jake is great, and he's absolutely, sending the signal of what's happening in the industry. And of course,
Mhm.
Microsoft is a big, big player in that, along with others, but for sure,
Yeah.
the big investment and big motions that are all getting aligned across marketplace being the center of co-sell. I think that's a sort of a center of ecosystem. So I think that's a great way to think about it. Um, this the funny thing, right, is Bill Gates wrote a book many years ago called The Road Ahead,
Mhm.
1995. And
Right.
in there, he talks about marketplaces. He talks about e-commerce. He talks about that future of digital transformation. And so now here we are at this version of it, but it was something it's been on the roadmap. It's been there for a very long time. We just needed all of the components to come together to really make it come alive. And so here we are at the start of another wave of innovations that will just continue to accelerate further. So please pay attention to what Jake is saying. It's definitely the truth of how Microsoft thinks about that future.
Yeah, and I mean,
Mm.
maybe you can talk about why partners really need to invest in marketplace, why this is so important today. Like you talked about the landscape and what we're seeing in the innovation. So, in your perspective, why is it so important now?
Yeah, so there's I think a couple of converging things. There's, sort of attitudinal purchasing comfort around being able to do things through
Mhm.
just transaction oriented relationships. Purchasing relationships, we know from the retail side of things, are a no brainer now when it comes to releasing all kinds of commerce types of transactions in a marketplace of unknown things. Um,
Mhm.
and we actually trust the marketplace and the vendors of those marketplaces to protect us, to make sure that the services and the solutions are well vetted. And that is definitely something that the marketplace team that Jake leads has a charter and a mission and an accountability for. Is ensuring that the quality of technologies and solutions that are in the marketplace are up to the highest standards. So that's why you're going to find that very rigorous to sort of go through that kind of process. The second thing is that it's an operational burden to have to come up with your own marketplaces and all of that fidelity that comes with it. And so it's an opportunity to buy back some of that operational cost, and to be able to scale globally, different markets, different relationships, all within this transactional layer. And I think just as much as we in the channel have been talking about ecosystem, there's an ecosystem of customers that we're also trying to connect to, scenarios of the future that AI is going to have a big role in defining. And I make no claims of being an AI expert, but I am definitely incredibly AI curious.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's going there, right? It's definitely
Right.
there. Let's not like resist that part of it, but let's do it with the appropriate eyes wide open on how we make the most and best of that future. And then I'd also say that it is just absolute transparency and orchestration. um, so how can you understand better the state of your customer and the kinds of things they need as they ebb and flow to new areas of opportunity and address their customer needs? You need things that are going to be agile and flexible and able to move as the customer's moving, or as you as partners advise customers to move. And so rather than having um, limited purview into what's available, now the field, now your customer, now your partner ecosystems all have access to a vetted, well defined, aligned opportunity solutions to partner and engage in.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up some great points there. And one of the first points I heard was people are buying differently now. We're buying different as consumers, and that's gonna transfer into how we buy in our businesses. And so, it's just becoming the natural way to procure stuff. So that's a great point you bring up there.
I think just maybe one more point on that one. It's the buyer of the future, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of research out there about who's making business decisions now. It's not in centralized IT functions anymore.
Right.
I was one of those people inside of Microsoft. I was a MarTech, sort of
Mhm.
consumer. And so I was always looking for ISV solutions to be able to support, where we want to go next and create some experimentation and all of those things. And that's just, I mean, and I'm Gen X. So there's a whole sea of people coming into decision making power and influence
Right.
that are very comfortable with a very different way of being sold to. And it's where experience and relationship trust is paramount.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And then you talked about sort of the global reach. I think that's a huge advantage that so many partners today, we think about it from sort of a smaller geography, and the marketplace really tears down those boundaries in my mind. It really just changes the game of who you can reach and how you can reach them.
It does. It does. And imagine when these marketplaces become even wider, a wider connecting points to a constellation of other marketplaces, of other ways to consume and access and have experiences. So I think there's a lot to pay attention to in terms of the signals of what's going on in the industry, how channels are being defined, how customers are looking for information on how to buy, what to buy, when to
Mhm.
buy, the influencer ecosystems, communities, right? Those are the things that are going to help create the insight on what customers are looking for and how we can define a new market together.
No, no, that's amazing. That's great. Well, let's take a minute and sort of transition to um, what the marketplace is. I mean, we talk about the marketplace like it's a single thing, and in the Microsoft world, that's not true. I mean, there's multiple marketplaces. Maybe you can share with our audience your view of the marketplaces and what they are, the different marketplaces.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll have to say maybe first is that Microsoft doesn't think of multiple marketplaces necessarily. They think of the marketplace. And
Mhm.
then there are different sort of doors to get into it.
Right.
Um, they look and feel different because you've got, entitlements versus consumption, right? Subscription, things that are today in that way. But just think of that for future, right? Like think of it that it is something that's going to be even um more aligned, um, right? So as those systems become more mature, but it is, as you know, Jake says, all roads. So
Mhm.
think of it as the center of co-sell. So there's the co-sell from Microsoft where they're going out and attracting customers to it. That's one version of it. There's a version of it that is about enabling channel ecosystems. So from the two-tier or the indirect providers, formerly known as distributors, uh, to um, to Microsoft's marketplace, their marketplace, and then the partners that sort of transact in between. And then there's the sellers themselves. So Microsoft's thousands of sellers around the world that they get a whole catalog of insight on partners, not just the managed, not just the precious strategics, which they're becoming fewer and fewer of those because the
Right.
accountabilities are immense in those relationships. Um, but for the addressing the world, like addressing the needs of entire markets, countries, um, there's industries, like there's all kinds of room in between. So there's not only that in terms of what comes into the marketplace platform, but then how it gets embedded in products. You're already seeing some of those opportunities when you go to Teams and you see all the apps that are available there for you to bring in. This marketplace allows you to have access to those opportunities in Microsoft customers as well as those that are out in the open market.
Now that's I love the analogy of it's a single marketplace with multiple doors. So, and for me, what that means is that the marketplace isn't limited to just what we would think of as an ISV, but to your point, there's Teams apps, there's consulting services, there's all these different ways to enter the marketplace. And so I love that analogy. I think that really helps to sort of solidify to how to think about the marketplace. So that's great. Um, I did want to ask a question. You touched on something called co-sell. And for those that don't know, maybe you could take a minute and just walk people through what co-sell means from your perspective.
Yeah, I think part of what what I used to battle when I was, working for Microsoft, and then what I think continues sometimes still is that co-sell gets defined as a managed, like you're in a managed relationship with Microsoft. And I can see why, because it is the pinnacle of how
Mhm.
we think about the relationship. It means co-investment, co-build, co-marketing, co-selling, right? Like it's the whole thing of
Yeah.
that relationship. But it's actually it has for many years for Microsoft been much broader than that. And it is about how we enable partner to partner relationships. And fundamentally, how do we do so in a way that gets to customers with the most ease? So I think it's about thinking about that's why Microsoft started talking about solutions instead of products, even though it's a
Mhm.
very product oriented company. Solutions were the way to go because that was from the customer's point of view. And it allowed us at Microsoft to think about customer scenarios first.
Mhm.
And so when it comes to co-sell, I think the best way to think about it as a partner is what do you know about the customer scenario? Microsoft defines the market by these solution plays just to give us a head start on
Right.
what they're seeing is the future. What they're seeing is going to be sort of your fastest or largest total addressable market for that customer scenario. But we also see it indicated in how they're looking at the partner programs. I was just re-listening to something to a webinar or something from Dan Rippey, who used to be who still is a dear uh, colleague. And he was um, he was talking about how there's all these changes that have been happening to the Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program, now full of lots of letters.
Yeah.
Um, but the inclusion of AI is please see the signal in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Don't miss that.
Subtle like a brick right there.
Yeah, I mean, right? We went from MPN to MCPP Cloud
Yeah.
Partner Program. Now, right? Microsoft AI Cloud.
Okay.
Like, don't miss it. Um, so the but you see that there were these, it adjusted to these solution designations and now specializations. And what it's saying is these solution areas represent large market constructs, the specializations represent the customer workloads. And they represent the things that Microsoft is seeing is needed in the market to address customer needs. That's where there's differentiating and distinction and customer insight that could be brought into your own solutions, into your own business, into the way you sell, and certainly in the kind of insights that you share back in relationships with Microsoft and Microsoft communities.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something that it's a subtle change, but I think a really important one was the shift to a solution play. Back in the day, it was a sales play. It was like, how do we sell this product? And now there's just in that simple change, you're thinking about it differently. You're thinking about how are we solving these problems? What are the problems by industry, by vertical, whatever it might be. It's
Mhm.
it's thinking about it in that solution oriented way, and I think that's a really important distinction there.
But I think and that's and to, the co-sell adjusts to that, right? So what gets prioritized, what gets invested in, the requirements for being able to be a sort of a co-sell first type of partner. Doesn't matter size. It matters your orientation on how well you can help address that market need. Um, some of the strategic relationships are definitely look like the biggest billion-dollar partnerships, right? That's just sort of the state of what it means to be in a multi-trillion dollar market opportunity. The
Right?
numbers are huge. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it also, these different specializations, solution areas, they're telling, like Microsoft's sending the signal of like where they're seeing the longest term opportunity or the first opportunities that they're willing to invest in now. And that's what the programs help to do to, hundreds of thousands of partners at a time.
Right, right. It is such a massive ecosystem. So maybe we could shift gears a little bit and talk a little more tactically. If somebody's thinking about the marketplace and thinking about what they would do to start to participate in this marketplace movement, what does that look like for a partner from your perspective?
Yeah, there's gosh, I don't want to jumble up everything. So maybe the first place I'll start with is understand let's just start at the very basic, which is what's your offer,
Right,
right? What's your offer? So I'll leave that there because it's funny how that gets missed.
right,
It isn't what your capabilities, what are all your
right,
capabilities? It's
right.
what's your solution? What is your offer? And what are your wraparound things that are going to make that the most successful for the customer and the lowest amount of friction, the most trust that you will create in the relationship?
Yeah,
And the marketplace allows you to smarten that up and make it repeatable. So you have that one thing. That's yours. The other
yeah,
thing is know who you're partnering with, right? So that's a lot of diligence. You have to know yourself, then you got to work with somebody else who knows themselves,
yeah,
right? And then they got to make sure they know their customer and that you have a really rich, trusting relationship with all of the, value systems and legal revenue share and all the things that make
yeah,
it a collaboration, a partnership, right? A structured thing. The marketplace is going to provide you with some baseline things. It's going to have sort of general terms and conditions that you can accept across your solutions with other partners. It's going to help you find partners that are going to be, good matches from a data perspective.
mhm,
It's going to give you insight on, just sort of transactional reporting across these different relationships that you have. It'll give you access to customers, right? It'll do all those things that are just embedded in what's core to, driving some partner to partner. But there's a lot of legwork before you get to that place. So do it. It's
right,
it'll probably take you years to
yeah,
really have the right level of partnerships if you don't have them now. If you and what you might find as you're working with more and more partners is you have to develop a partner program yourself that
right,
helps create some kind of scale mechanism and requirements and quality controls and recruiting to exits. of that whole partner relationship. Like you've got to do that too. I love the words that I hear coming up now about micro ecosystem. I mean, you are basically creating your own micro ecosystem for the solutions you're trying to surround your customers with. And when I talk about the part, like finding the partners, this also goes into, solutions and services, consulting, in addition to the actual SaaS. Like those are things that need to come together more. And the marketplace that Microsoft is investing in, that Jake is leading, is enabling more and more of those kinds of transactions and relationships to happen much easier. So, one of the things that I would say, so we talked about know who you are, know who they are, come together in a relationship that's meaningful for your customer and your business models, and then port them into the marketplace, leveraging some of the functionality that Microsoft has, like the multi-party offer. Just was in private preview for a year. They just released a public preview for the America for US, I think.
US, yeah.
It might even be going to America soon, but eventually it will go global. So all of those things, all the roads are going just are being built. um, and then the maybe the other thing to think about is, the start of this had, basically a lot of contact me solutions or
Yeah.
contact me services that were in the marketplace. That was just basically a catalog listing. It's kind of like a nice, it's I'm thinking of it like that whole catalog, the old school catalog of things that
Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
really have a
right?
lot of depth to. Um, but that's not the future. The
Yeah,
future is transacting. We've seen the signals from the programs. We've seen the signals for how they're incentivizing the field and the channel. Like it's all going to transacting the marketplace. The Azure consumption credit, the Max, were all just a function. It was a tool. The reason why they're growing as much as they are is because that was the way we incented
mm,
our relationships. That's how we sort of push the point of making sure that there is um, transactional um, transparency in
mhm,
how we are providing services to our customers so that a vendor like Microsoft can sort of see what the ecosystem at large looks like.
right.
Um, so that's why all of that stuff is growing. And most of those are actually private offers, right? So it's not like there is this, suddenly a big TV campaign goes out on Microsoft Marketplace and people are buying. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah,
These are private offers that are going into specific discrete procurement systems, where there are people that are hand holding the process to make sure that PO is transacted through the marketplace in a private offer to that specific customer with a specific set of partners that are involved.
yeah, that's a great point. I think that a lot of people look at it, well, I don't see that many transactable offers. And it's not, it didn't just go from contact me to everybody selling. It's a
Mhm.
process. And, I think also one of the other really important things you brought up is at the very beginning of the process, you have to understand that it's not just list it and they will come.
Right.
It is a process. You said it best. It's like you have to know who you are, and you have to know who you want to work with, and have they have to know who they are and who their customers are. It really is. It's there's so much more to it than just build it and list it. It's really a process.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe one other thing I'll say about it's co-sell related, but I think it's also related to future of selling. So, I think it's really smart for partners to think about revenue operations. We see that there's a rising title in the ecosystem with growth officers and um, you know channel officers sort of redefining their role and their remit. Marketplace needs to be at the center of that strategy, and that means a whole new revenue operations model to go with it.
Right,
Which, when you look at the signals from Microsoft, they are going into SMB, SMC. You have to do that with engines. They've got a digital sales team that Kevin Piesker has been talking about for the last 2 years that they're deeply investing in. So now how do you manage tens of thousands of engagements at once when
right,
right? Like a person to person relationship, maybe you could do 30.
right.
Well, maybe, right? You always knew there was an 80/20 there. But
Right. Yeah.
imagine when things are AI driven and the
Yeah.
insights about when to contact, who to contact with, what to contact a customer opportunity with turns into something that is entirely co-pilot enabled with human capacity, right?
Right.
To create the trusted relationship. So that's a big signal. And that is a huge opportunity. And it's where all of the innovations are in the SMB. That's like where all the smaller niche offerings are that suddenly grow up to be
Yeah.
$100 million companies. You know, it's amazing, it's incredible, and it's like Microsoft is creating that sort of structural foundation to enable trillions of dollars of growth to go through it over the next decade.
Right. Well, I think you painted a very important picture there, and it's that, what if the partner community gets this right? What does that look like? And I think you started to you were going down that path of what this could look like. I mean, you think about Kevin Piesker's organization, tens of thousands of customers with hundreds of thousands of opportunities. I mean, yeah. I'd love to hear from you what you think about that from the what if scenario.
Yeah, and let's just set the scale right. It's hundreds, it's millions, right?
Yeah.
It's everything. It's all of it, and it is the largest part of our economy is in the SMB.
Right.
So, right, so it has to be enabled through turnkey things. And so, so I start thinking about, well, what are the big platforms of scale? Where are they? What do they look like? And they're definitely in procurement systems, procurement economies, procurement platforms, and these are things that get embedded into the enterprise all the way into um, aggregators that help to bring them into smaller market. So I'd pay attention to things like, what are the strategies that are starting to look at new channels of access? And I think there's something to pay attention to with telcos, and because they seem to have access to customers, and we know there is so much to do to innovate in telco, from the customer experience to the programming to the billing, like to the things that really enable even more access to places that don't have access today.
Right.
Um, so lots of room to think about there, and I think we can see that every hyperscaler, especially Microsoft, is going after it hard.
Yes, yeah, that is for sure. I mean, it's the whole landscape is changing, and I think that to that point of marketplaces at the center of it. I think that as the partner community, if you don't appreciate that and you don't understand that that's where the world is moving, I think you risk losing out on a massive opportunity.
Yes, agree. So I think one of the biggest empowering things you can do if you're in this industry, and what I really really love is the community ecosystems. There's many out there that are starting to sort of come up and realize that there's a lot of work to do to build trust between partnerships to really make this ecosystem thing work.
Right.
And so how do you do it, right? And I'm involved in several communities, founded one of them, co-founded one of them. So there's
Yeah.
a I know the truth of what it means to create relationships, get joint thinking, like move an ecosystem forward, and an ecosystem large small, right? So there's also providers. Workspan is clearly one that's trying to create some ecosystem movement, and I think they did a great job in partnership with creating these different summits and things to bring some thought leadership together. People are definitely looking for it,
Yeah.
and that's happening thousands of partners at a time. There's 500,000 in Microsoft's ecosystem and growing. So, there's plenty of
Yeah.
room to find innovation and create um, ecosystem communities and ecosystem movement in the right direction for revenue and growth for all of us.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But I think you pointed out there that trust is still part of the equation. Even as we move into this sort of digital world, this AI empowered world, trust still is the foundation of it. So, and I appreciate and I see the things you're doing in the community to build that trust. And it's how partners and how the partner community is going to thrive, I think, in the new marketplace AI empowered world. So
Absolutely. I do too. I'm excited to see where it's at, and I know it just gets better from here. It will.
absolutely, absolutely. I think we're only in the early days. So
We are.
well, this has been an amazing chat, Karen. Thank you so much for joining me. And maybe you can just tell people where they can get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you. How's the best, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, my direct email is Karen at abundantmc.com and LinkedIn. Oh, you can always find me there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, Karen, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I'll look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yeah, Rob, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.